Hey, what's going on, guys? This is AndrewChicken, and welcome back to another video. Valve just released their first set of major balance changes ever since the big update that added 6 new heroes to the game, and it's got changes for most of the hero roster, as well as a ton of items. So, I'm going to be covering all the balance changes here today. If you want to follow along, of course, a link will be in the description, and if you appreciate this coverage, why not consider subscribing? It would really help out a lot. So first of all, this mid-boss crystal will now only heal the person who actually hits the crystal, just like this, which should make fighting for the Rejuve crystal with other teams a little bit easier. I don't really know why I said other teams. There's only one other team, but regardless, team fights down here will be a little bit easier because you won't have big groups of people being healed all at once. The second general change is that when you die to a non-player, such as the Walker or this electrical thing right here, and no bounty is given out, no assist is given, no kill is given, no souls are given out or anything like that, then an extra 10 seconds will be added to your respawn timer. And the reason they're doing this is because some people would use it to reset early on lane, or just in general, really, if they were really low and needed to respawn quickly and get a bunch of health back without taking the zipline all the way back to spawn and then all the way back into the fight. It was a faster way to reset, but that's not going to be the case any longer because of that extra respawn time. The final general change is that when you take down the patron, it will now drop into the pit after a consistent 12 seconds. Previously, it was actually a variable time between 8 and 15 seconds. Now it's just a constant 12, which should make planning your engagements around the patron dropping into the pit just a little bit easier and more reliable, which I think is a pretty good change. And that's it for the general changes. Now it's just a bunch of hero and item balance, and I'm only going to be covering the big highlights of the hero changes here, so if you want to read the small changes, you can pause the video now and I'll have them up on the screen. They're all just pretty minor changes that speak for themselves, but we're going to be talking about the major ones now, starting with Bebop, who is getting some love, finally. So his weapon range growth per boon has been increased from 1.2 to 1.5, so that's basically how far away you can hit his laser. As you can see here with no boons, it's pretty short, but if we go ahead and max level ourselves now, we can hit this laser from much farther away, which definitely feels pretty good. And they've done the same thing for his bullet damage growth per boon. It's gone up from 0.13 to 0.14, so just a little bit more damage when you are at max level now. Exploding Uppercut also got some minor cooldown buffs. They took the base cooldown from 21 seconds down to 19 seconds, and they buffed the tier 1 from minus 10.5 seconds to minus 11 seconds. So now we're looking at an 8-second cooldown on the Exploding Uppercut with the tier 1 upgrade unlocked, which is just a little bit faster than it was before, which feels pretty nice. And finally, they gave a pretty major cooldown buff to the Hyper Beam. The cooldown has gone down from 120 seconds to 105 seconds. Shaving 15 seconds off that is crazy, and when we get to tier 1, it's still minus 25 seconds cooldown, so we're looking at an 80-second cooldown now for the Hyper Beam without any items. So that's pretty nice. Billy has gotten 2 buffs. First of all, his health has gone up from 730 to 740, so he's a bit tankier on the lane now, ever so slightly. And also, they decreased the Rising Ram's cooldown by 3 seconds, from 33 down to 30. And if you get the tier 1, that takes it down by minus 50% on impact, so that'll be a 15-second cooldown by default. So he's going to have a bit more tempo in the fights because, well, he's going to be able to use Rising Ram more consistently, and that should feel really good for the Billy player, just for overall engagement, especially when you get some cooldown items online. Calico is getting some love. She's a hero who I haven't seen too much of recently, and some might even say she's fallen off. So let's take a look what they did to her. First of all, the Gloom Bombs is getting a buff to the tier 3. It's gone up from +2 bombs to +3, which is actually quite a nice increase. It means you're going to be doing much more damage with the Gloom Bombs at max level. Ooh, look at that. And they also buffed the Leaping Slash, so the melee damage scaling has gone from 1.3 up to 1.5, and the heal spirit scaling has gone from 1.2 to 1.4. So as you level up your character, right, you get more items online, more spirit power, etc., more melee damage. This is going to be hitting much, much harder and healing you for a lot more, so she should scale a little bit better into the late game now. They also buffed Ava. They took the tier 3 from minus 15 seconds cooldown up to minus 20 seconds cooldown, so now we're looking at a 25-second cooldown with the tier 3 online, and they also give you more health regen, from plus 25 health regen to plus 35 health regen during Ava with this tier 3, so very lucrative tier 3 now. And finally, a base buff to Return to Shadows. The cooldown has gone from 110 seconds down to 100 seconds, so you'll be able to use this more consistently now, engage in fights more consistently now. This is a big part of her kit, so this is a pretty powerful buff. Alright, so Doorman. Let's talk about Doorman. Pay attention to this, because he got one change that's just really sensible, honestly, a change that I thought was necessary. I think Deathy also mentioned this when I asked him about it in his stream, and then he got one change that is a massive buff. do not underestimate this buff. It is huge. So let's take a look at the small change first. The Call Bell's explosion damage has gone down from 70 to 60 in the early game here, but the spirit scaling has been buffed from 1.4 to 1.5. So this is a nice change. It's going to mean that his damage scaling will still be pretty good in the mid to late game, but in the early game he won't be doing quite as much poke, because I thought his early game poke was just way too oppressive, and it looks like enough people agreed, so that's a sensible change. But here's the change that's kind of ridiculous. I'm just going to show you. So I'm going to take control of this Infernus, I'm going to make Doorman my puppet, have him ult me, clear follow, and then I'm just going to jump down here. And it teleports me back to the start of the Baroness Hotel. That is a massive change. You know why? Because now you can't get out of the Baroness early. You have to get out by completing the parkour challenge, and there's no more cheesing it with heroes like Viscous and the Cube, or of course with the item counterspell, which was a very popular way to counter it. You have to complete the parkour challenge now, otherwise you're sitting in there for the full 6 seconds. So that is a very major buff to his ultimate now, and especially if you get slowed or knocked down or anything during that, you know, he preps you with a cold front or a slowing hex or something. Yeah, this ultimate's going to be keeping you in timeout for much longer now, and that's going to give his team more time to react, it's going to give him more time to get away if he's using it to retreat. It's a very major buff, so do not underestimate the Doorman ult now, and yeah, make sure you're ready for the parkour challenge. Hallelujah, Drifter's getting some nerfs. Oh my gosh. So, he's just getting a lot of nerfs to a whole bunch of different parts of his kit, but he is also getting one very interesting change that should make him feel a little bit better to play. So, the health gain per boon has gone from 41 down to 39, so he's going to get less health at max level now, and just for leveling up in general. Actually, he doesn't even breach the 2,000 threshold now, so yeah, that's a pretty big change to start off with. His weapon fall-off start distance has been reduced from 24 meters to 22 meters, so just a little more weapon fall-off now. And the weapon damage gain per boon has been reduced from 0.55 to 0.52, so he gets less damage for leveling up now as well. On top of that, the tier 3 bonus amp for Blood Scent has gone down from 11% to 10%, so you now only have 25% amplified damage against isolated heroes, which is still a lot, but is going to just mitigate his 1v1 potential just a little bit more. But the one change that's pretty interesting is that Rend, which is his melee attack here, allows you to briefly float during the air during the cast time. Just like this, which means that if you happen to teleport to someone who was flying, like, let's say, a Great Talon, you can actually stay in the air and hit your Rend just a little bit easier. And this actually feels super fluid and pretty nice to use. I do like this change. So, yeah, that's one major W in a sea of red for the Drifter here. He definitely needs these nerfs, though. Great Talon is getting some buffs, as well as a bit of a retooling to his Spirit Snare. So let's take a look. The bullet damage growth based on Spirit Power has been increased from 0.07 to 0.08. So if you scale up Spirit Power now, your gun is going to be doing just a little teensy bit more damage now. That's pretty nice. Also, the curse duration has gone up from 2 seconds to 2.25 seconds. That is actually pretty long. And they changed the tier 2 and the tier 3 around. So now the tier 2 makes the Spirit Snare apply minus 15% bullet resist for 10 seconds. And the tier 3 is where things really get interesting, because the tier 2 previously it adds an extra 3/4 of a second of curse duration, but now the tier 3, as you can see, adds plus 1 second of curse duration and 1.5 meters to the radius of the Spirit Snare. So yeah, that is up to a 3.25 second curse duration. Look at that. That's pretty much I think that's the duration of the actual curse. Yeah, that's the duration of the actual curse at tier 3 now. And it applies it in a pretty big radius, and obviously you can get greater expansion if you want, and you can make that just huge. So, yeah, a bit of a retooling to the Spirit Snare, and, yeah, nice to see Great Talon get some buffs. I still don't think he's in, like, the greatest spot, but, yeah, this definitely helps. Holliday is getting a bunch of changes here. So, first of all, her gun is getting a slight retooling. The base bullet damage has gone down from 26 to 22, however, the base damage growth has increased from 1.08 to 1.23, so as you level up, your gun is going to be back up to being pretty powerful, so this is just to reduce her early game poke. And they've also done a slew of changes to the powder keg. So, first of all, one thing that I'm absolutely happy to see is that the powder keg displacement duration has been reduced from 1 second to 0.4 seconds. They cut that in half, actually more than half, which means that it'll be much easier to recover your movement after getting hit by a powder keg. This was honestly a very annoying, disruptive tool to fight against, so I'm really happy to see this change. But they've also done some stuff to the damage numbers. So the base damage has gone down from 90 to 80, and they've also reduced the tier 2 damage from 75 down to 65. However, they did increase the spirit scaling by from 1.4 to 1.6. So if you scale up some spirit power, I don't know if you'll necessarily be back at the same levels as you were before, but you will certainly at least be getting some power back. So if you want to play Spirit Holiday, you're now going to really want to go all in on the spirit. And they've also made it so that the Tier 3 charges have been reduced from 3 to 2, so that's actually a pretty big consistency change. But to compensate, they have added plus 0.4 seconds of displacement duration to the Tier 3. So this will bring that 0.4 seconds up to 0.8 seconds, which is still 0.2 seconds less than the previous displacement, but it'll basically be feeling like the normal displacement again, and I think that's reasonable compensation for taking one charge away, because, yeah, having... Geez, what was that, 4 charges by default? That was pretty insane. Oh, my beloved Dash Infernus, my favorite way to play him ever since I figured out what it was. It's been nerfed slightly, which, I mean, is fair enough. A lot of people have been playing it recently. So, yeah, they reduced the base DPS from 33 down to 30, and they also reduced the Tier 2 DPS from 37 to 35. So, some pretty minor changes. We're losing about 5 DPS in total here, but that is still definitely going to affect your scaling, especially with any percent-based buffs like escalating exposure, which you would generally tend to get on something like this anyways. Mina is getting some pretty big buffs here, and there are some people who probably won't like this who already think that Mina is pretty strong, but if you ask me, I would say that she is probably the weakest of the new heroes that got added, so I am willing to test these out. So let's take a look at what they did. First of all, they massively boosted the spirit scaling of Rake's heal, particularly from 1 to 1.5. That is a 50% increase, ladies and gentlemen, so that is really going to be impactful, especially because, you know, you do tend to get some early spirit items online, like, of course, improved spirit, mystic burst, quicksilver reload, and when you get that online, we're looking at 86 health per kill. Now, we're getting 56 from spirit power. Add an extra 20 on that, we're getting 106 health per kill, which is really, really nice in the early game. When you use this Rake on a couple of minions or on a tier 1 camp, that's going to be just so much sustain for you, so that is really good. Love Bites buildup also now takes 1 less shot. You build that up much quicker now. It only takes 6 bullets now, it looks like, so that is pretty huge. They also buffed the damage on it. They buffed the proc damage from 45 to 55, and they also have buffed the spirit scaling from 1.5 to 1.7, so now spirit power is going to be even more effective on the Love Bites. And finally, as if that wasn't enough, they also buffed the cooldown of Nox Nostra by 15 seconds from 130 down to 115 seconds. So, really big buffs here for Mina. Spirit scaling buffs are nice, more damage on the Love Bites. She's going to be hitting pretty hard now, honestly. I'm going to be a little bit scared of the Minas I see in my matches from now on, because this looks pretty insane. And in a twist of events that shocked absolutely no one, 7 is getting another slew of nerfs. Wow, who could have seen this coming? Certainly not me. So, first of all, they nerfed his move speed from 6.9 to 6.8. Not nice. Not nice at all, Valve. Why did you do that? Oh my gosh. The second change they've done is they have lowered his crit resistance. So if you don't know what this means, basically, in Deadlock, different heroes actually take different levels of headshot damage. Some characters, like Seven and Mo and Krill, take reduced headshot damage because they have really big headshot hitboxes, and so they naturally get hit in the head more than other characters. And so that's what's getting nerfed on Seven here. Previously, he took 35% less headshot damage. So he would still take headshot damage, just 35% less than you would normally do to someone like, I don't know, Hayes. But now that has been reduced to 25%, meaning that gun builds all of a sudden just got a lot more effective against 7. All you have to do is aim at the head. You're going to be doing a lot more damage now. So that is a pretty big change to 7's survivability. And then they've also nerfed the Power Surge Tier 3, which has improved spirit scaling. They've taken that spirit scaling down from 0.34 to 0.3. increase, so you're just going to get a little bit less damage on this power surge now. And they've done the same thing to the Stormcloud. The spirit scaling has gone down from 0.65 to 0.6. But the real big change to the Stormcloud here is that they've actually nerfed the radius from 12 meters to 10 meters. So your early game Stormcloud all of a sudden just got a lot harder to hit. I mean, obviously this is still a pretty big radius, and if you're just right on top of the enemies, they're still going to take a lot of damage from this, but it is now easier for enemies to escape your Stormcloud because of that reduced range. And that will carry forward into the range for the rest of the game, because the Tier 2 provides plus 10 meters of radius. That's still going to double your radius, but you're still missing out on those 2 meters from the base nerf. So, in general, the radius on this is a lot shorter, and it also means that you get less radius from greater expansion too, because it's a percent-based increase. So, yeah, it's still a very powerful ultimate, still going to blanket an entire region of the map in electricity, but it's just a little easier to escape it now, and I think that's a pretty good change. Shiv is getting some buffs, and honestly, it seems like they really want to make him a sort of tank-focused character, because a while back they buffed the bloodletting quite a lot, and they've actually buffed the bloodletting even more. And they've also given some buffs to 2 of his other abilities. So first of all, the Serrated Knives Tier 3 has been increased from 37 damage and 6.5 bleed DPS up to 40 damage and 7 bleed DPS. So a little bit more spirit damage on the daggers. Now Spirit Shift just a tiny bit more viable. And they've also buffed Slice and Dice as Tier 3. So previously you would only get max minus 6 seconds per dash, but that's gone up to minus 8. So if you hit an extra enemy hero, you hit 4 heroes with 1 dash somehow, or obviously you hit 2 extra NPCs because it's 1 second for non-heroes, then you will be able to get 8 seconds off the cooldown of the Slice and Dice, bringing that down to just a 4-second cooldown. So I guess that's nice, if not a little niche. And they've also buffed the bloodletting quite substantially. So the bloodletting cooldown has gone down from 25 seconds to 20 seconds. They've also increased the incoming damage deferred from 25% up to 30%. Oh boy. And the Tier 3 has made it so that instead of clearing 35% extra damage, you now get 45% damage cleared. So if I just max this out, let's look at these stats. 40% incoming damage deferred, 85% deferred damage cleared. Whew, that is a lot. You can almost clear all of the damage now. So, ooh, building around the bloodletting, taking a bunch of damage and then just snapping your fingers and waving it all away, that's going to be pretty big now. He is a very, very tanky hero. They're really allowing him to initiate a lot more this patch, allowing him to get in, make some space, get in the enemy's faces, tank some damage, and then just absorb it all for free with the bloodletting. So, really big nerfs to Shiv, and honestly, I definitely overestimated his strength originally. They did a bunch of nerfs to him. I still thought he was pretty solid, but it seems like he has fallen off a little bit, and so, yeah, I do understand why they are doing these changes now. Sinclair is getting quite a lot of very interesting changes that have me questioning a lot of things. So, let's take a look. First of all, very sensible change. The Vexing Bolt radius has been reduced from 3.5 to 3.25, so this has been a very powerful ability to build for. You've seen Vexing Bolt Sinclairs going for just massive levels of burst damage, destroying walkers in mere seconds, and yeah, really just having a grand old time. And they can still do a lot of damage, they just have to be more precise with the Vexing Bolts now. However, they have also changed the Assistance. So the Assistant's base damage has gone down from 18 to 15 per shot, although it looks like it's doing 16. I probably picked up some extra spirit power from something. But yeah, they also have increased the spirit scaling from 0.28 to 0.36, so potentially room to do even more damage in the mid to late game. They also have boosted the Tier 3 up to 60% fire rate. Whew, okay. From 45%, by the way. So that is a very big fire rate increase. Look at that. That is pretty crazy. They've also buffed the Rabbit Hex Tier 3 from plus 5% damage amp to plus 7% damage amp. So now we're looking at 22% damage amp to the people and the bunnies. And the thing that has me scratch my head the most is what they've done to his ultimate. So audience participation cooldown has been reduced from 100 seconds to 85 seconds. The duration has also been increased from 10 seconds to 12 seconds. Honestly, I don't have much of a problem with that. But they're buffing the cooldown of an ability that's already able to have a way lower cooldown than the ultimates that it steals. Like, you steal a Dynamo ult with Magician, you're going to have that ultimate back way faster than the Dynamo did. So that part has me scratching my head a little bit. Maybe someone in the comments can help me understand why they might have done this. I'm just a little confounded by that, but overall it seems like Vexing Bolt Sinclair is getting, honestly, mostly a slap on the wrist, and then every other aspect of Sinclair is actually just getting a little bit better. Victor is getting some very big nerfs once again, and no one should be surprised by this because I think he is the strongest of the new heroes, at least when it comes to his release state. So, first of all, his health per boon has been reduced from 45 to 41, minus 4 health per boon. That's actually pretty big. If I go at max level now, we are looking at just like Drifter, less than 2,000 hit points, just barely. So that is a pretty big change, especially for a guy who wants to be a tank. Honestly, though, the biggest change here is to the Jumpstart. Jumpstart's recharge timer has been increased from 3 seconds to 8 seconds, more than doubling the recharge timer. If you don't know what this means, this is basically the time between uses of your charges. You're not able to just use all your charges back to back to back. You have to wait between charges. So previously, you were able to cleanse debuffs pretty consistently, especially because Rapid Recharge has the very fun functionality of increasing the time between charges by 50%. So instead of a 3-second time between charges, you had a 1.5-second time between charges. You could just cleanse those debuffs all day long and get a ton of healing and movement speed. But now, it's 8 seconds between charges by default, and even with Rapid Recharge, you're still looking at 4 seconds between charges. So that's 4 seconds during which the enemies have time to apply Heal Bane to you, among other debuffs as well. So, you still have debuff remover on a charged ability, as well as a ton of healing and movement speed, but now you have to be smarter about how you actually use them in a fight, because, well, you won't be able to just get another one for free 1 second later and cleanse any debuffs that the enemies have put on you, and this is going to give them much more of a window of opportunity to actually deal with you. Now, you're still going to be really powerful, of course. They haven't nerfed any of the actual stats of Jumpstart apart from that, but this is still a very big change. On top of that, they have nerfed the Aura of Suffering. They haven't nerfed the damage, but they have nerfed the radius, so now it's a little bit harder to actually keep people in the Aura of Suffering. It's gone from 9 meters down to 8 meters. You might want to consider starting to build, like, range on this guy now, maybe a little bit. This is kind of tiny. And they've also nerfed the cooldown from 1 second to 2.5 seconds, so you can't just toggle it on, toggle it off, toggle it on, toggle it off, which honestly doesn't seem like that big of a change to me, not compared to the range change and also the jumpstart change. Those two seem like the big changes for Victor here, so he's definitely going to be feeling a little bit worse, but his damage is still going to be really strong if you build him up, and he obviously still likes to go for all of that defense too, so I think he's still going to be pretty good, but these are definitely some well-needed nerfs. Alright, let's take a look at Vindicta now. She's getting a couple of shakeups. So first of all, the Stake. This is probably getting the biggest change. Stake no longer has a smaller tether range than capture range. So basically, if you didn't know, previously you could be captured into the Stake within 9 meters by default. However, the tether range was only 6 meters. And so if you got tethered basically between the 6 and the 9 meter radius, right, that 3 meter gap, it would pull you from where you were in the sort of 9 meter range into the 6 meter circle, so it was even more displacement. But now, the range is just 9 meters, and this is actually quite a good thing in my opinion, because 9 meters is much bigger than 6 meters, and so it restricts you to a bigger area than if they had done the reverse and made it so both the capture and the tether length were 6 meters. So you're still able to capture people into the Stake from a very large distance, especially when you get, greater expansion and stuff online. But it won't be pulling them in anymore, and they'll have, just an easier time wiggling around in your Stake and, hopefully trying to stay alive, I guess. So that is pretty nice. It's just going to feel better to play against now. They've also reduced the duration from 2 seconds down to 1.75 seconds, so you'll be able to get out of the Stake a little bit easier. Finally, though, they have slightly buffed it. They buffed the stakes slow from 30% to 40%. Next up, they have tackled her flight. So the flight duration has been buffed from 12 seconds to 13 seconds. The spirit damage has increased from 9 to 10, and they have also buffed 2 of the upgrades. So the flight tier 2 has been buffed from 6 seconds to plus 7 seconds of duration, and they have also buffed the tier 3 from plus 11 spirit damage to plus 14 spirit damage per bullet. So this is a just straight up massive buffs to her flight ability. So you're going to be able to do a lot more damage and stay in the flight for longer. Of course, the one issue with the flight is that you're kind of a sitting duck up here, and I think that's why they've done this. They've made it more of a risk-reward thing, where you do get a lot of reward for flying around like this, but, you know, you're still really slow. You can't exactly parry or use your stamina or anything up here, so yeah, you gotta kill the enemies quickly, and they give you the tools to do that. Finally, they've changed around her Crow Familiar a little bit, so the debuff duration has gone down from 6 seconds to 4 seconds. It's going to wear off much quicker now. And they've also changed around the spirit scaling a little bit, so they actually reduced the spirit scaling quite significantly from 0.022 to 0.013, almost cutting it in half, but they buffed the base bleed per second from 2.15 up to 2.7% per second. That is actually a very, very big buff, so you get a lot more power on the damage right away. But again, remember that the debuff wears off 2 seconds earlier now, so you have less of a window to do that damage, and overall I think the damage on the Crow Familiar is just going to be lower because of that duration change. And on top of that, they have nerfed the consistency of it. When you get this tier 2 now, instead of providing 16 seconds of cooldown reduction, now only provides 12 seconds of cooldown reduction. So in general, stake has gotten a little bit worse. The Crow Familiar has gotten a little bit worse, but a little more bursty, I guess you could say, and the flight has been pretty massively buffed in terms of its damage output. So yeah, definitely a lot of big power shifts for Vindicta, and I honestly can't tell you for sure whether this is going to make her net stronger or net weaker in the meta. If I had to guess, you know, her Stake and her Crow Familiar are 2 of her most powerful abilities, the flight less so it's probably a net nerf for the meta overall, but we'll just have to see. And honestly, I don't play much Vindictus, so I guess take that with a grain of salt. Viscous is getting a power shift to his alt fire, so it's going to do less poke in the early game, but it is going to scale much better into the late game. The base damage has gone down from 63 to 48, so that is a pretty big change. We are losing 15 damage here, but the growth per boon on the alt fire has gone up from 0.45 to 1.25, so more than doubling the growth per boon. So if we max level now, our alt fire is doing 62 damage, which is that's the same as it was before, pretty much. It was 63 before at base, and that was before growth per boon. So even in the mid to late game, it's going to be doing less damage just across the board, and that's definitely going to hurt any of the people who are using Express Shot or playing silly alt fire Viscous, which is a wee bit unfortunate, I guess, and I wonder if maybe they could increase the damage growth per boon even more to make it so it actually scales properly into the late game. Honestly, I'm not even sure if it's worth using in the late game. Vyper is getting some changes that really seem to buff Spirit Vyper in particular. A lot of changes to her abilities. So first of all, I guess the one change that kind of is pertinent to Gun Vyper is that the fall-off minimum range has increased from 13 meters to 15 meters, so a little bit more poke on the gun. The rest of this, though, really seems to apply to her Spirit abilities. So first of all, the Screw Jab Dagger. The Spirit scaling has been increased pretty drastically from 0.74 to just 1-to-1 Spirit scaling. They've also reduced the cooldown from 10 seconds to 9 seconds, and the tier 3 has been buffed to double the slow duration from 1 second to 2 seconds. So yeah, just a little bit more damage on the Screw Jab Dagger now, especially if you actually do bother to scale Spirit on this character, and the slow is much more potent now. So yeah, overall some pretty big changes there. Lethal Venom's cooldown has also been reduced from 26 seconds to 20 seconds. Now, how much this actually matters once you get the tier 3 online, I don't necessarily know. But at the very least, before you get the tier 3 online, this means that you're going to be able to apply the Lethal Venom more consistently. I think that's really going to matter on lane too, much more consistent pressure on that. 6 seconds off the cooldown is a very big deal. Finally, they've buffed her Petrifying Bulla. The range has increased from 6 meters to 8 meters. That's the radius, by the way. And they have also buffed the cooldown from 110 seconds down to 90 seconds, so you can use it more consistently. And I believe that this will also affect the range at which it, petrifies all the enemies with the tier 3 upgrade. So yeah, Spirit Viper is just going to feel a lot better to use, and even if you're not playing Spirit Viper, certainly the uptime on the cooldowns of both these abilities and the range of the Petrifying Bull as well is going to feel very nice. So, yeah, she should feel really good to play this update. Warden is getting 3 changes to just kind of cut down on his overall power. So first of all, they've reduced the base sprint speed from 2.5 to 2 meters per second. So he's going to do this silly little run, just a little slower now. And also, they have nerfed the Tier 2 on Alchemical Flask from 45 damage to 40, and they nerfed the Spirit scaling of Last Stand from 1.6 down to 1.45, and that's probably the biggest change here, because that's quite a big number change, and it's going to mean he's doing even less damage with the Last Stand now. Still a very powerful ability, though. We'll see if this truly is enough to knock Warden out of the meta or not. I think he's still probably going to be pretty good after this. So that's going to do it for all the hero balance changes. Now it's time to look at items, and we're going to do this in 3 sections. We have the weapon section, the vitality section, and the spirit section. And for each of these sections, I'm going to put the entire list of changes on the screen here. I'm not going to talk about every single one of these changes because some of them are pretty small, but I am going to focus on the big changes. So yeah, you won't miss out on anything too important. So first of all, Weakening Headshot is getting a pretty nice buff. It's getting 1% extra bullet resist shred, and the debuff duration is also going up from 10 seconds to 12 seconds, so the enemies are going to have their resistances reduced for much longer. And this duration buff in particular also applies to its big brother, Crippling Headshot. This now also lasts for 12 seconds, so a nice little buff to both of these items. Backstabber has also received a couple of nerfs. The cooldown has been increased from 4 seconds to 5 seconds, so you get to apply this less consistently. The cooldown now completely matches the debuff duration. And they've also nerfed the spirit damage per second from 20 down to 17. I think this is mostly a targeted nerf towards Drifter because he gets this item pretty much in every match. It's a guaranteed item for him because he forces himself behind the enemies where he can proc it no problem. So, yeah, I guess that makes sense as kind of an indirect nerf to Drifter, and I guess anyone else who likes to use this item. They are once again buffing Blood Tribute in a desperate attempt to get people to actually use this item. So the spirit resistance has been increased from 8 to 10%. That's honestly not bad. And the movement speed while active has been increased from 2 to 2.5 meters per second. But that is all they've done to it, so I still just don't really enjoy this item at all. I don't like the health drain, I don't like the healing reduction, and I mean, it's a cool idea having a toggleable item, but this has just never really hit for me. Let me know in the comment section down below, do you actually use this item? Do you enjoy using it? Do you think it's strong? I would love to hear from you, because personally, this just never hit the mark for me. Headhunter is getting a pretty solid buff here. The bonus damage boon scaling has been increased from 3 to 4. That's a 33% increase on the actual damage that you get per boon. So if we grab this item and we go ahead and max level, we are now looking at a damage of 203 bonus headshot damage. That's pretty nice. We get 128 from boons. So yeah, that's going to be hitting a lot harder now. I wonder if we're going to see more people pick up this item, because ooh, let's just do 349 damage there on a headshot. Oh, that's kind of nice. Shadow Weave is getting a buff that fixes one of the things that kind of made it lackluster in comparison to Veilwalker for me, and that is the movement speed. So they have massively buffed the movement speed that you get while active from 2 meters per second of sprint speed, actually sprint speed, not move speed, to 5 meters per second of sprint speed. So you pop this now, and you are able to move much, much faster now. Look at how fast my silly little drifter guy is sprinting. So yeah, Veilwalker also gave you, I think it's 4 meters per second of move speed. And honestly, I don't understand why they don't just make it move speed on Shadow Weave as well, instead of just sprint speed, because sprint speed is a little bit harder to make use out of. But regardless, yeah, this is going to feel really nice. It's going to help you traverse the map better. And yeah, they really want people to use Shadow Weave. They have buffed this a lot in recent times. And finally, Spellslinger is getting a very big buff. They have increased the buff duration from 14 seconds to 18 seconds. And this is kind of a twofold buff. First of all, you just get to use your fire rate and your reload speed for longer. But second of all, whenever you actually activate this ability, right, whenever you cast an ability or an item, and you get that buff, it refreshes the duration. And so by adding 4 seconds to the duration here, you thus increase the amount of opportunities that you have to refresh it and build up to the maximum stacks of Spellslinger, which is yeah, quite nice indeed. You get all of that extra reload speed and fire rate. So yeah, this is a very nice buff to Spellslinger. You might see more people who cast abilities regularly actually pick this up now, because it's just so much easier to use now. Alright, next up, let's talk about the Vitality items. And again, I'm going to put all of the Vitality changes up here on the screen. You can pause and read through these if you want, and I'm going to cover the highlights, the most important changes here. First of all, Rebuttal, getting a very big change. As if this item wasn't good enough already against melee heroes, they have changed it to, instead of providing just plus 50% melee damage, which was already really nice for the early game, now Rebuttal makes it so that you get 30% bonus damage against the parried target. That's global damage, by the way. That affects your gun damage, your spirit damage, and obviously your melee damage. So while it's a lower percentage, the fact that it applies to everything now makes this really good on any character in the game if you need to counter melee heroes. So you have an Abrams who's running wild, grab Rebuttal, parry him, and then hit him with your supercharged doorbell or anything like that. And it's going to do a lot more damage, and I can just showcase that here. I go ahead and parry this guy, now my gun is doing 45 or 46 damage when normally it does 36 damage. So that is a very, very nice change to Rebuttal. Honestly, for 800 souls, this is incredible value now. You can get this, keep it around the entire match if the enemies are meleeing a lot, and, yeah, just reap the benefits. Restorative Locket is getting a sort of power shift here. So the healing per stack now scales with boons rather than spirit power. So the reason I say this is a power shift is because, obviously, if you were to get a lot of spirit power, you could potentially scale this to higher than its current max value of 30 per stack. But if you were not scaling spirit power, then, well, this wouldn't give you as much healing, and now it's kind of made it a universal item that you could pick up on gun builds as well, and not have to worry about the scaling of this item. So it's a bit of a power shift, and we'll see how that shakes it up for the meta here. I think it's still going to be pretty good on the characters that already wanted to use it, just because the 2 extra stamina points are really nice, and it's still a pretty good amount of healing per stack, and they haven't changed the base healing at all, so you're still going to get quite a lot from this. Veilwalker saw Shadow Weave getting all these cool buffs, and it decided, hey, we can't have that. I need some buffs too. And so they buffed the heal per boon from 3 up to 4. A lot of extra healing on that now. And they also increased the duration of the invisibility from 6 meters to 7 meters, which that's actually quite a big deal. 1 extra second on this is going to, in some cases, mean the difference between successfully sneaking up on a target or escaping the enemies versus not. So that's a very nice change to Veilwalker. Next up, Healing Nova also has been buffed pretty drastically. The healing per boon has been increased from 4.4 up to 6. 1.6 extra healing per boon, that is nice. It's going to scale much better now. And they also gave it 6% ability range. So yeah, this will be able to hit allies a little bit easier now, and I suppose if you're scaling this with Divine Barrier, geez, that's like 20% ability range now, just from these 2 items, before even getting Greater Expansion, which is probably overkill if you're getting these 2. What are we at now? Geez, 45, 48%, yeah, 48% ability range. That's silly. So, yeah, very nice buffs to Healing Nova. Trophy Collector also gives you more souls per minute now, from 23 up to 25. So if you get up to max stacks with Trophy Collector now, it's going to be much easier for the item to actually pay itself off and start earning you dividends and building up your soul lead over a match. So yeah, this is a little bit easier to justify now. Still a very high-risk item, because if you don't get the kills to stack this up, then it's going to be useless. But, yeah, more rewarding now. That's nice. Siphon Bullets has gotten, honestly, a well-deserved rework, because, ooh, this item was kind of a tricky one to balance. Stealing max HP from the enemies is really, really good. It adds a ton of damage to your character, and adds a ton of health to your character, too. It's really powerful. So what they've done is they've reworked how you actually, how much health you get from this. They have reduced the max HP steal from 55 down to 35, but they have made it scale per boon. So you get 0.8 max HP scaling per boon. If we go ahead and max level our character right now, you will see that we go up to 61 max HP steal per bullet. So you can potentially get more max HP steal at the end of the match, once you are all maxed out on your character. But for most of the match, you're going to be stealing less HP than before. They have also made it so that the duration has gone down from 20 seconds to 17 seconds. So the enemies will be refunded their health a little bit earlier. So definitely an overall nerf to Siphon Bullets, because for the early to mid part of the game, it's not going to be nearly as strong as it once was. But I think it's still going to be a good item, and yeah, you'll definitely still want to pick this up on the characters that were already picking it up. But in some cases, it might not be as worth it to go for it, as opposed to other survival and damage options. And finally, we have the spirit category here. So once again, here are all of the spirit item changes. Pause the video now if you want to read them, and I'm just going to be covering the highlights here. So first of all, Rusted Barrel. They are really trying to get anybody to actually buy this item in a serious capacity before you upgrade it to Disarming Hex. So they have increased the cast range from 23 meters to 28 meters, meaning it's much easier to apply this, and they have also made it so that the bullet resist reduction has been increased from 5% to 6%, which, I mean, it's definitely kind of nice, but now one thing you'll notice, it's a little awkward, maybe an oversight, is that Rusted Barrel has more cast range than Disarming Hex. Disarming Hex is still at 23 meters, there's nothing that says they buffed it, and indeed, in game here, it's still 23 meters. So, yeah, that's actually one case where Rusted Barrel upgrading to Disarming Hex is a downgrade. Oh god, never thought I'd be seeing a downgrade from Rusted Barrel. After that, we have Cold Front. Now, the damage on this has been reduced from 125 down to 100. It still retains the same spirit scaling, though, so you can still definitely increase that further, and Arctic Blast remains unchanged at 175 damage. This is still going to be an incredible item, though, and one big reason why you picked this up is for the movement slow for 4 seconds. 60% is a lot, and a lot of characters like Victor or Doorman or anybody really who likes being up in close quarters would pick this up to make it easier to keep the enemies in close quarters or slow them down so you could, you know, slow them through a Doorman ult or something. So, yeah, this is still going to be a very powerful item, but totally understandable why they would want to hit the damage on this a bit. Spirit Sap and Silence Wave are getting some nice changes. Spirit Sap got a lot of extra spirit power reduction, so it reduces the enemy's spirit power by 24 now, previously it was 18, so that is a very big change. And that also carries over to Silence Wave, which now also reduces it by 24 spirit power. On top of that, they have slightly nerfed the duration of the silence from 3.75 down to 3.25, matching the duration of Curse, but they've made it easier to hit. The width has been increased by 10%, so now, throw that out, and yeah, it's much easier to hit this. So, a bit of a trade-off, but that minus spirit power is actually pretty chunky now, and this also lowers their resistances too. I think it's still a pretty good item, actually, so yeah, very nice. DK has also received some buffs. They nerfed this item really hard over the past couple of months, and so they're restoring a little bit of power because it has honestly completely fallen off. So they've reduced the cooldown from 36 seconds down to 32 seconds, much more consistency on it now, and they have also buffed the spirit scaling from 0.0038 to 0.055. I'm sorry, am I reading that correctly? I think they meant to say 0.0055. Because it looks like in game it rounds up to 0.006. Yeah, that would have been an ungodly amount of extra damage. So yeah, no, it's not quite as strong, but still, yeah, you get a lot more spirit scaling on this now. If I go ahead and buy Boundless Spirit, we're looking at 3.15% per second, which yeah, is a nice bit of extra damage that it wasn't doing before. So yeah, maybe we'll see more people pick up Decay now as an option for their anti-heal. Focus Lens just got a really big buff that took this item from being dookie dog water to potentially really good. So Focus Lens was bad because you could debuff remove it. Debuff remover is half the price, and when you did debuff remove Focus Lens, it didn't do any damage. And that's kind of the big point of Focus Lens. You silence somebody, and then all the damage dealt to them during the silence gets applied when the silence wears off. But if it doesn't do the damage, then it's just a more expensive and frankly much worse silence wave. But now, if it gets debuff removed, it will still deal the damage. So once it gets debuff removed, all the damage that's been dealt to them at that point will be applied via the 30% damage on expire method. So yeah, you will still be able to do a burst of damage with this. Now, if they debuff remove it immediately, it's still going to be doing like almost no damage. But the point is now, you will still get some damage out of this, so it's not totally unviable now. I'm still Curse Gang, though. I still think this item is just far better if you're going to buy a 6k Silence. Escalating Exposure has been nerfed because of its Spirit Resist. Never thought I'd see the day, but yeah, this is a very meta item on Victor, because not only does it provide a metric crap ton of damage, it also provided 20% Spirit Resist, and that has been nerfed to 17% Spirit Resist. Still a very respectable amount, but not nearly as much as it was before. They have also, finally, nerfed Spirit Burn. They reduced the ability range from 10% to 8%, and they also nerfed the proc damage from 120 to 110. That is the explosion damage. So, pretty minor nerfs, but still nerfs nonetheless to a very powerful item. And that's going to do it for this doozy of a quote-unquote minor update. Man, we have balance changes to almost every character and a ton of items, and they call it a minor update. Golly, Yoshi, what's wrong with you? So yeah, let me know what you think about this update in the comments section down below. Certainly a lot of pretty good changes, and a lot of changes that are going to be pretty big for some characters. So I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments section down below, but personally, I'm very excited to play the new patch. Deadlock has been a blast to play recently, and so I'm going to keep enjoying it. But yeah, also, if you've enjoyed this video and you enjoy my coverage of the updates, then of course make sure to like this video and subscribe for more future content from me. Helps me stay up to date on all my latest videos, and it also helps me out in the algorithms. So yeah, it's a great deal. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. I will see you all next time. Peace out.